scholarship, that one's worth about $240,000.
All right, we're going to get started. Good evening. Today is February 7th, 2024, and I will now call the meeting of the Planning Commission will come to order. Please rise and follow Commissioner Guerra on the Pledge of Allegiance.
We're blessed to live in a country where we can proudly proclaim our flag. If you follow me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I now have our Planning Commission Secretary, Ria, please call roll.
Thank you, Vice Chair Uva. Commissioner Lujan?
Here.
Commissioner Guerra?
Here.
Commissioner Guerra?
Oh, here.
Commissioner Sekeli?
Present.
Commissioner Morales?
Present.
Vice Chair Uva?
Present. We will now move on to the oath of office for our new commissioners. At this time, will the Planning Commission Secretary please assist us with swearing in the newly appointed commissioners?
Will the newly appointed commissioners please stand? Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your names, do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations to each and every one of you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Congratulations to all three of you and welcome to our Planning Commission.
Thank you, Chairman.
Gosh, the next item on the agenda involves a presentation, but I don't see that he's here.
No, thank you, Chair. Yes, we have recognitions tonight on the agenda for our former commissioners. Former Commissioner HORACIO ORTIZ, who is now a council member, and also a recognition for our former Planning Commissioner MIGUEL DUARTE. Mr. DUARTE did let staff know that he appreciates the recognition. He's unable to attend today, but that he sends his regards and would be picking up the certificate from staff following tonight's meeting during the week. And council member Mr. Ortiz did let us know that he might be able to attend, but perhaps he was held back at another engagement. So if we do have the certificate, if there is, he is able to arrive, we could potentially take it out of order at your discretion, Chair. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
He was planning on coming around 4 o'clock. I talked to him and he was planning on coming, so maybe he got delayed. So yeah, maybe he shows up.
Okay, not a problem. Did you want to make a request? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair Uva. One item for staff was relating to an agenda item listed under Section 4, Presentations. We did want to request, staff did want to request if the commission is amenable to changing that item to Section 10, other business, following election of officers. And this change would allow for, to ensure that we are able to hear any public input from any member of the public under the previous Section 8, public comments. So by moving the item, we would ensure that we allow the public the opportunity to comment on that item under Section 8.
Does any commissioners have any objections to moving that?
No.
None. Okay, great, thank you. Now is the time set aside for oral communications from the Planning Commission. Does any commissioner wish to make an announcement, report on a conference, meeting, or request items for a future agenda? I will start on my very far right, Commissioner Guerra.
No, I have none, thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lujan.
No, I don't. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here with you guys. So.
I have none either.
Okay, great. Commissioner Morales.
I don't have any, Madam Chair. We do want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be back. It feels good. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does the Community Development Director, Irma Huitron, have a report on the City Council action or any other general updates?
I don't at this time. Thank you, Chair.
There are no public hearings on today's agenda. Now we will proceed to non-agenda public comment. Persons wishing to address the Planning Commission on city business not listed on the agenda may do so at this time. Persons wishing to address the Planning Commission on any item listed on the consent calendar or an other business may do so at this time. It is requested but not required that you state your name, address, and subject matter upon which you wish to speak. Please limit your comments to no more than 4 minutes. Pursuant to the Brown Act, no discussion or action other than a brief response, referral to the city planning staff, or to a schedule for a subsequent agenda shall be taken by the Planning Commission on any issue brought before not listed on the agenda. Anyone wishing to come up may come up now.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Javier Granados. I live at 7205 Cool Grove Drive on the island in Downey. My concern is that I just want to know the facts. I just want to find out what's going to happen when 33 proposed condominiums are going to be built on the entrance on Suva and Foster Bridge. We were told by the Olson company that a traffic study survey had already been done and that it was here at the city. So I came today and I spoke to these lovely people here at the planning committee, Abraham and Rhea and Angelique, and they were really, really helpful and lovely. But all I want to know is there a traffic study? And if there is, can we get it? Also, I'd like to know the actual dimensions of the footprint of the buildings that are being proposed. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Adrian Uribe, and I live in Cool Grove and the Treasure Island. My primary concern lies in the anticipated increase in traffic, particularly during peak hours when children are commuting to and from school and residents are trying to access the freeway via Suva Street, Foster, and Bluff. Suva Street, in particular, is already constrained, especially on the bridge. And the presence of large school buses and the Downey Link buses exacerbates the existing traffic challenges. During peak time, traffic jams are commonplace, leading to congestion that extends onto Suva Street hindering the smooth flow of vehicles. The issue is further compounded by the four-way stop sign on the last street that I mentioned and Guatemala Street, causing delays, creating a bottleneck effect. Placing the townhouses next to crucial and heavily trafficked streets where residents access the 5 and the 105 freeways within a mere 2.8 miles presents a significant challenge. Given the proximity and the development of these freeways, it's likely that residents from neighboring cities such as Bell Gardens may resort to using Suva Street as a shortcut to access the freeways. This anticipated increase in traffic further underscores the necessity of a comprehensive traffic impact analysis before proceeding with the townhouses project. Also, we face homelessness around Treasure Island Park and the LA Riverbank. The presence of homeless individuals has led to an accumulation of trash, significantly impacting the cleanliness of our streets and the park. Approving additional townhouses in this already impacted area raises the potential for increased population density, which may attract more crowds. This in turn poses a risk of exacerbating the existing cleanliness challenges faced by our riverbank and our streets and the park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, here we are. All the self-congratulatory comments, pointless platitudes. Corruption is running rampant through the city of Downey and through every one of its commissions. Everybody has their people in place and the corruption runs wild. Okay, this proposal that's going to be put on a future agenda is going to require a general plan amendment, zone changes, site plan review, density. It's going to increase density. And the fact is, this is just another plan to destroy the single-family dwelling neighborhood. That's exactly what it's for. This is why these people are in here tonight. They don't want to see 33 condominiums being put in their neighborhood. It's going to be a nightmare on parking. I know I access that road frequently. It will be a total disaster. But the point is that obviously some people have it already planned that they're going to approve this thing, just like you approved the 3 townhomes on 5th and Lorena. Think about that, on 5th and Lorena. You're going to tear down that historical house there, that single-family dwelling house, and you're going to put townhomes there. What a disaster. But it passes no problem, because what's the irony is we have an individual in this room tonight who lives in an adjacent city. When the same proposal was put by their house in their city, they fought it tooth and nail. Tooth and nail, because that individual didn't want townhomes next to their house. They didn't want townhomes next to their single-family dwelling. But when they come over here, all of a sudden they have a change of heart. And right out of the gate, they're willing to change and knock down a single-family dwelling and put 3 townhomes on 5th and Lorena. Now, that's kind of telling you something that's going on here. But that individual is in this room tonight, and they have absolutely no shame at what they're doing. All of a sudden they come here and they're flipped. It's okay to destroy single-family dwellings, but not theirs, where they live. That's the sad part of what's going on in this town. People are sick and tired of it. If you wanted to have townhomes, you should have put them on the corner of Firestone and Downey instead of a Shake Shack. If you wanted to have townhomes and affordable housing, you had the opportunity to do that over where you're putting the Honda car dealership over there. And that's why you're out of compliance with your housing element numbers. Your priorities are wrong, and you don't represent the single-family dwelling families in this town. But you don't care. You don't care. So I'm here to tell you that this is not a good plan. It should not be passed. It should not be even considered. But we'll see what happens with you and the corruption that's running rampant in this town. And that was on full display at the council meeting when the council funded the Stay Gallery. That was on full display, and that permeates throughout the city, that type of thinking and those types of activities, and it needs to stop.
Thank you.
I'll make this short and sweet. I lived on the island for 50 years, and I'll tell you what, no matter what you think, this is a disaster. That's all there is to it, a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Aimee, and I come representing my community, myself, my family. I've lived in Downey for 20 years, my whole life, basically. And I just have to say that I don't feel as if these condominiums that are going to be placed on the old church is a really good representation or idea for the community of Downey and the people that live there currently. I don't think it serves our best interests or our best needs in mind. And I don't think it is any good idea. Like, I just think that there's something so much different that you could put in that space to serve the community. Maybe it could even be like an extension of the park, provide some more adequate services and really build up that park to what it needs to be, referring to Treasure Island Park. Because it's just like a little walking trail, and I just feel like if the needs of the community in that area were really being targeted and looked for and sought out for, we would prioritize something different. I don't think housing is representative of that, and I think that there's just so much more that we can do with that space and different ways to allocate that time, money, and resource. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alfred Calderon. I also live on the island. I live on Cool Grove. And I just wanted to add on to what everybody else has said, but also what I also noticed that there's plenty of traffic as it is because there's a school nearby. There's two schools. There's one in Bell Gardens, and there's also the elementary school on Suva. So just on when they have special events, which even tonight it seemed crowded just to go by there, and adding more traffic, more people is just not the right plan. So I just wanted to add on, and everybody else had mentioned what I was thinking. So I just wanted to let you know that I don't approve of that plan of the condominiums. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Gabriel. I live on the island on Hammond Street. And as is, the traffic is really bad. Adding these condominiums, more people, more traffic, more cars. People walk through there all the time. And with all these cars going back and forth, it's just very dangerous. I have kids. I walk with them. I have my dogs. I walk with them too. And just the traffic that's there, I try not to even go through Sua anymore, Foster Bridge, simply because of the traffic that's there now. And now imagine more condominiums, more people, more cars. They're not going to have one car per condominium. They're going to have 3, 4, okay? It's something that concerns me simply because of the traffic, the people, it's just going to get so saturated there to the point where right now it takes me from Paramount and Suva all the way to my house. It takes me close to about 10, 15 minutes to go, 5, 6 blocks maybe? It shouldn't take me that long. And now with this condominium, I mean, can you imagine it's gonna take me half an hour to get home? I mean, for other people, there's other ways to get in. through the island is just that one road, then 2 ways to get in and out. And that's just a concern to me. You know, it's, yeah, I've been living there for 23 years already. I love the place, you know. I'm probably gonna, you know, live there for the rest of my life, hopefully. And so I just want to, you know, the way it is right now, it's okay, but there's a lot of traffic through there. And that's my concern. That's one of my biggest concerns on there. You know, and just to get in and out, let's say I forget something, if I try to go back through it, I can't. I have to wait about 45 minutes to an hour till the traffic actually dies down to leave, to go out of my house, to go do something, you know. If I want to go to the market, I have to wait, you know, quite a bit of time just to, when I get home by 5:40, I have to leave my house at 6:40 to do something. You know, it's just a concern. It's just something that you guys got to take a look at that, you know, take a look at the traffic that's there now and what it's going to cause to the residents there. And that's a huge concern. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm also a resident here in Downey. I live in the island in Glencliff. I've been there about 27 years, but I've been in the city of Downey for about 40 years. I went to Mount Price. I went to Griffiths. I've been in Downey, done most of my schooling, some of my work here. But I've seen how the city has changed. It was a very beautiful city, very clean city. It's becoming a different city now. And adding 33 condominiums, I express the same thing that everybody said right here. Having 33 condominiums, having all those people living there with different cars, with their families, yeah. A lot of people don't use their garages anymore. They use it to storage. They don't use it to park their cars. And where do they park their cars? On the street. So if you have 90 cars parking on the street, on Foster Bridge, maybe on Bluff, maybe on my street now, which is down the street from there, on Glencliff. It's gonna change the city again. Vandalism is gonna come over. People are gonna leave their cars overnight, maybe 3 days, parked there. So seeing all this impact it's gonna have not only on parking, seeing how it's gonna impact the flow of traffic, even the population, it's gonna be more. So having all these different things affect the city there on that part of the island, it's gonna affect the living situation of everybody that lives on the island. I've enjoyed living there. It's been very peaceful, very nice, but it's changed. Now, adding more to it is gonna cause bigger changes. And I don't think it's for progress. I don't think it's for something that's better. I know the situation is very dire on housing, and we need housing. But there's other places that we can put them, other places we can have them. Condominiums could go up near places like we have over here, Downey Landing, or different places that you could have big old condominiums, big rooms you can put on there. Different little places that you can add to it. But why add 33? How come it can't be just single family homes again? Condominiums, but not 33. Why not just put 10, 15? But why add so much traffic and so much problems to a small little area? Because it is just a small little piece of Downey. It's just like we're on the other side. We're like little forgotten back there. But it's a peaceful little area. And if we want to keep it peaceful, I think adding something like this will disturb the peace of the community. It will impact everybody around us. And I do see that traffic. Every single morning when I leave, I see the traffic that's because of the school. But I understand. Kids got to go to school. People are trying to be safe, trying to drop them off. But in the afternoon, when you come back, trying to cross that little bridge, you can't. Everybody from Bell Garden is coming over. Everybody from Bell Garden is trying to go home. And our residents that live there in Downey, we guys gotta wait, suffer. Nobody wants to use Florence. Everybody wants to go through down Suba. So all that traffic, all that smoke, everything that we have to breathe because we're waiting there and walking. I go to the park, all that traffic's there when I'm walking in the park. So all that's affecting not only my health, my family's health, but also my peace that I like to keep. And it's changed. I wish you guys, as a planning commission, can really consider that as not only our health, you know, we're struggling to breathe clean air, but we cannot breathe clean air if we have all that traffic and all those people living there. It's gonna change everything for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Go ahead and talk about traffic again, but a little different. I was a math teacher at Griffith for about 30 years, so I know how to take numbers and, you know, squeeze them a bit. I was told a few days ago that the study on traffic put it as 1 car every 4 minutes on Suva. Well, today at 5 o'clock, I counted cars. Okay. 7 signals, the rotation of the 3, and it came out to 203 cars going through that intersection. I can squeeze that to make you really imagine a lot of things, but that's not the busy time. The busy time came when I came to this evening. We left the intersection to go to Paramount, and it took us 4 minutes. I can almost walk it that fast. So the figures that someone came up with as a study, 1 car in 4 minutes, I believe that was done just before Downey became Downey and they had the horse and buggy with the orange crew. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, it looks like we have no more speakers coming forward. Oh, do we? Okay, go right ahead.
Hi, I live on the island as well, right on Glencliff, and this is gonna impact me greatly. I'm not gonna be a fan favorite here by saying this, but I was a hard no initially when this was presented to me. And just seeing what goes on at night with that empty lot there, the parking lot, and there's a lot of, there's been an increase of vagrants and people coming from the riverbed. The crime has increased around there. There's been a lot of break-ins. So building something there, the reality is I think it will be sold and something will be put there. And for me, if it's gonna be something like it's been described to me, I'm sure there's gonna be a presentation at some point of, I don't know when that's gonna happen, I haven't heard that. But if this is something that's gonna be sold at market value, which I would guess, based on what was told to me, are in the 700K range. I mean, so long as it doesn't diminish the value of our properties in the area and it adds value, I think that's something that also needs to be considered that everyone here is not really thinking about. I would be a hard no on any low-income housing for sure, but if this isn't approved, then what will be? It'll be the same process all over again, and someone else is gonna come in and present something possibly worse. So that's just another thought I had. You know, I think if we keep them at something that's a high value or a market value, that will increase our property values at some point. And what else can we add? Like, are we gonna get additional support for police, more higher patrols? I mean, what else are we gonna get with this? If we're gonna be having another, it's 66 people? If you put you assume 2, not including the children? I'm not happy with the traffic that's there now, obviously, but a lot of it is coming from the BG area that crosses through there and passes right through. And it will greatly impact me as far as the parking. And I was told that no one will be allowed to park on the street who lives there, that they can't use the garages for storage. But I don't know how you're gonna enforce that if it's somebody who owns the property there. Another thing to consider, like, is that gonna be something enforceable, that people have to park in the garage? I don't think you can do that. Just a question I have. I mean, you can't force somebody to tell them where to park on their property. I don't know. So, I guess that's it. That's my 2 cents here. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like we have no more, oh, sorry.
And just if chair, through the chair, if I may, as the speaker's coming to the podium, for members of the public, since this item is not set for a public hearing tonight, the project that's being made reference to is a future agenda item on a future meeting. The project, it would be located at 7360 Foster Bridge Boulevard, but since the item is not on tonight's agenda for a public hearing, the Planning Commission won't be able to respond to any comments. But just know that we are taking note as staff. We're here sitting on this side of the room. We are taking notes of the comments, and we will be make ourselves available. I can make an announcement after the last speaker about the planners, but I just wanted to make sure the public knows it's not that the Planning Commission doesn't want to respond or engage, but it's not allowed to be deliberated on tonight by the Planning Commission, but we are hearing your comments. Thank you.
Should you also announce the date of that hearing or not?
I can make an announcement after our final speaker.
Great. Okay, go right ahead. Thank you for waiting.
Good afternoon. I live on the island as well, and I live a bit further down. But my concern is the traffic and having so many cars in the area. The island is very peaceful, as some of the speakers have stated. We've had a little bit of an increase in problems, and it's just because of the riverbed and the homeless issue that we have with the riverbed. But having the church there, I feel like it's brought a sense of community. They always have prayers out there. So instead of having 30 additional condominiums built there and having additional people there, maybe if it can be directed towards something that would help the community more, like another church in that location. I drive by there. I work long hours at night, so I drive by the lot and I rarely see something going on. But if I see something, I call it in. And Downey PD has, you know, they come out and they check out the area. When I'm coming home, I see patrol. So I think the issue more is the riverbed, not really that empty lot. So I don't think we need to put homes, extra homes there just to protect us from, you know, crime in the area. There's still going to be crime. I feel if we have extra homes and there's extra cars, that's gonna bring more problems because, you know, people are gonna wanna break into cars and then we're going to have that issue. With how many people live there now, I don't know if anybody is from the area or if you've ever been down there. Like, I'm gonna give you an example, Halloween. It feels like if you look at old movies where all the kids are able to trick or treat and walking around freely, and it's just a lot of families who are walking the streets trick or treating. I see people walking all the time, walking their dogs, and it's a sense of community there. So I feel like having all this extra traffic, all these extra people, it's not going to be the same. We're just going to bring unnecessary issues. So that's all I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of our audience that would like to come up and make some comments? All right.
Vice Chair, if I could say something. Before any public comment, we received a public comment through email on just about 5:30, we were aware of it about 5:30 today. It's at the dais and in the back of the room too, if anybody would like to see that comment.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so.
And through the chair, if I may now, I just wanted to let the members of the public that as city staff, we do appreciate your input and taking the time to come out an evening, especially we know it's a cold evening, to voice your concerns. A couple of things I wanted the group to note is that as staff, we're still preparing and reviewing some of the project materials that have been submitted by the applicant. If you notice, and if you got an agenda at the back of the room, under item number 11, it says items to be placed on future agendas. Tomorrow, as part of the public noticing, there will be an official notice to the public of the upcoming public hearing, which would be February 21st in just a few days at this Planning Commission meeting, starting at 6:30, which would be the time and the day where this Planning Commission would be reviewing the project materials, and you would have another opportunity to come in advance of the meeting, provide your comments in writing, verbally, or at the meeting that evening as part of the public hearing process. And on that day, the Planning Commission will be able to respond and ask questions relating to some of the topics that were brought up tonight. Something else that I wanted to note to the members of the public in general is that there are environmental documents that have been available for public review that are on our city website under environmental documents. And then lastly, I wanted to introduce the project planners for the project. The principal planner, Alfonso Hernandez, who is on the far end here, is available in the lobby following, if anybody wants to go out there following the public comment period to provide your information, to get your name on a list. We can start a list today of interested parties to make sure if there are any changes that we're able to notify you. So if you want to put your name on that list, we will be having that as well. And then also wanted to introduce Abraham Luna, who is our associate planner, who's assisting Alfonso with the project analysis. And then just because I don't want to leave anyone else out, we're part of a big team. Jerry Clemente is also our associate planner, and Marissa is our assistant planner, and I'm the director of community development. So as a team, we're happy to serve you and continue to answer questions. We'll be providing a comprehensive analysis to the Planning Commission here on the dais on February 21st. The staff report would be available for public review, including to the Planning Commission on Friday, February 16th. So on that day, we would be releasing a comprehensive report and analysis regarding the project in question. And that concludes my comments, Chair Uva.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may make an anecdotal comment. First of all, it's great to see everybody from the island. I was mayor when we built the park, and we listened to so many of you and how we built the park. I am still the watermelon eating champion from your picnic there at Treasure Island. You haven't had one since. And the gentleman with the beard threw me out of a DJA game, Little League game, 35 years ago. So those are my comments, ma'am, but thank you for being here.
Okay. Yes, thank you all for coming and sharing your opinions. We appreciate that. So do we want to move on to item number 9 on our agenda, or since I see Councilmember Ortiz has walked in, do you want to do that presentation right now? Okay, so we'll move on to the presentation to, we would like to recognize former Commissioner Council Member Horacio Ortiz. We have a certificate for you tonight. I would like to thank you for your service on our Planning Commission. It was a pleasure to serve with you. We wish you nothing but the best of luck in your future career as our council member and whatever happens in the future to you. Thank you so much for your years of service. I believe you served for 3 years on the Planning Commission. If my fellow council members would like to say something, I open it up to you to make some comments.
I had the pleasure of working with him last year too, and he's been a pleasure. He's become a friend, and I'm so excited you're continuing to serve our city. So congratulations and thank you, Horacio, or council member.
I also want to congratulate Mr. Ortiz and thanking him also for appointing me to be on the Planning Commission for his District 1. So, and again, congratulate you and the best of luck on the city council because it's a big job in a great city here. Okay, so good luck.
Commissioner Saikali, would you have any comments?
Just congratulations.
Great. Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner or Councilman Ortiz, for your service. Appreciate it. I know it's time to give up your Wednesdays here, and now you give up your Tuesdays for City Council. So congratulations. I wish you the best of luck.
Great. I'd like to read the certificate to you. It's a certificate of recognition is hereby presented to Horacio Ortiz in appreciation of your participation and commitment to the citizens of Downey while serving on the Planning Commission District 5, given this 7th day of February 2024, and it's signed by our mayor and all of our council members, including yourself. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to make some comments, you certainly can.
I signed my own certificate.
That's weird.
I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. I learned so much being in the Planning Commission. It's not a goodbye, but you know where my office is at. I appreciate the staff. I know we have a new team and everything you have done. And I appreciate the friendships that I've gone here. Carrie, Mario, Louis, Hector, thank you so much. And I'm pretty happy that we have a full team now. Yeah. So I'm excited where the city's going, and thank you so much for this for the certificate. I really appreciate it. And now you have a friend in City Council. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We're now going to move on to our agenda, and we would be going to item number 9, consent calendar items. Approval of the minutes from the November 15th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments on the consent calendar item?
I think I have to make the motion, you or I, because we were the only ones that were here.
Yeah, I thought of that too, yeah.
So
Actually, Madam
how
Chair,
do we,
if I may, I did see the video, and so I can't participate on the adoption of the minutes, so.
Correct.
We do have a forum to go ahead and do that.
So I'll make the motion that we accept the consent calendar.
I'll second.
The minutes, excuse me.
Okay. May we have a vote? Okay, so yeah, you're just gonna push.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Here's my button here.
So really. Oh, it went away.
Went away. It popped up for a minute.
It popped up, but then it went away.
I'll do it verbally. Yes.
Okay, let me save the vote. Yes, that's right. He didn't vote. I would call a vote.
Do you want to do it orally? Okay, go right ahead.
I think Commissioner Morales voted yes verbally,
Yes,
Ria?
please.
So the motion passes 3 with 2 abstentions due to not being on the commission at the time. Thank you. And
Right.
thank you, Commissioner Morales. We appreciate your time on that.
No, thank you. My pleasure.
If I may ask the chair for one
Sure.
favor, if we can maybe take a 5-minute recess. I have 2 of my staff members who are
Oh.
part of the housing element implementation out there. So if we can do a recess of 5
Absolutely. We'll take a
minutes, we'd
5-minute recess.
Are you gonna do item 10 first, or are we gonna go back to that 4?
Oh, thank you for that. Yes, we could actually, since the doors are closed, I just thought there was a lot of commotion, but we could move on to the election of officers. And if staff is not back, maybe a slight break.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's
Thank you.
good use of our time.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I nominate Ms. Carrie Hoover to be the chairwoman of our planning commission.
I'll second.
Okay. May we have a vote?
You don't want any discussion?
Yeah.
It's not
Thank you.
working,
Not working.
okay. See, I told you, sometimes we have technical difficulties.
What do we break in?
Motion passes for Chair Uba.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yay, congratulations.
Okay, so now we need to, let's see here if we can, we good?
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Guerra as Vice Chairman, given that he's been here longer than us as we speak as a continuous commission. I'd like to
Great.
nominate Commissioner Guerra for Vice Chairman.
I will second that. Oops, sorry. May we have a vote?
Back up. Perfect.
Thank you.
Motion passes for Commissioner Guerra to be Vice Chair.
Great, thank you.
Could you guys go tell all those people out there who the new bot? No.
Do we still need to take that recess? Yes. Yes, absolutely. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
You want to go help your people.
And she just died within the last couple years. The housing element, correct? Okay.
It's good to see them back alive.
All right, we are going to reconvene, and we are going to move on to our agenda, and I'm going to have the housing element presentation overview. Irma Huiton will do the presentation.
I will do a quick introduction before we begin our presentation. Just a little bit of background for the Planning Commission. In August of 2023, just last year, the City Council approved the selection of a consultant firm named MIG to provide our city with the consultant services necessary to assist with the implementation of the city's housing element. And I would like to note that MIG consulting staff also assisted the city in the preparation of our state certified housing element that was approved. We have a representative from MIG today. His name is Jose Rodriguez, and he will be providing the presentation. A little bit about Jose: he has spearheaded numerous planning projects and zoning initiatives across the Los Angeles region, and he is ready to provide a brief, well, not so brief, just a little bit of warning. We did give you copies of the slides in case you want to take some notes and follow along tonight. The presentation is anticipated to last approximately 18 to 20 minutes.
Well, great. Thank you, Irma. Good evening, Chair Uva and members of the Planning Commission. As Irma said, my name is Jose Rodriguez, and I'm with MIG, and I am a project manager for this project. And I'll wait for the slides to start. And do I need to press any buttons? Oh, there we go. Thanks, sorry. All right, the presentation I'm about to give, I'm gonna provide an overview of what the housing element implementation project is. I'll provide a brief overview of the housing element, the context to the housing element and why this project is going forward, and then all the different tasks associated with this project for implementing the housing element, updating the land use element, the land use map, preparing a brand new environmental justice element, targeted zoning changes and amendments that we're going to be making, and then objective design standards that as planning commissioners you want to be well aware of. And then I'm going to talk about the community engagement approach for this particular project. And then we'll want to have a discussion with planning staff to provide any comments or feedback regarding this project. All right, the project overview. As Irma said, the city of Downey has a certified housing element. And within that housing element, there is an implementation program, programs that say what the city has to do to meet those housing obligations that are in the housing element. For consistencies, there will be an update to the land use element and the land use map to make sure that it's consistent to what was identified in the housing element. We're also going to be amending the zoning code, and I'll specifically in the presentation go over what those changes we'll be making to the zoning code, and it's all specific to the housing element. Update to the zoning map. We want consistency between the general plan, the zoning map, and then consistency with the housing element. And then I'm going to go through a little bit of detail and talk about objective design standards, what those are, how does it impact multifamily design, and so forth. And then lastly, a key component of this project, and many of these tasks are all triggered by state law, but preparing a new general plan element for the environmental justice element. So I'll talk briefly about an overview of what is in the environmental justice element and what is set forth to accomplish. All right, so bear with me. Let's talk about the housing element. And as you know, the housing element is one of the elements as part of the general plan, and it is the only element that requires certification by the state. And I'll talk about that process. And that certification is done by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, and I'll call them HCD throughout the rest of this presentation. But real simply, the housing element provides policy action items on preserving and ensuring that the city provides an adequate amount of housing. And as you heard earlier, housing will be a topic for the city of Downey. But the housing element was approved, recommended to the City Council by the Planning Commission back in October of 2022. And it was adopted by the City Council just shortly thereafter. And then the state, and I know there were several rounds of review, certified the housing element. But in that housing element, through that certification, the state made sure that there's programs, implementing items to provide and accommodate those housing units that are in the housing element. So let me talk about that a little bit. A key component of the housing element, it was called, it's this process called the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And simply, that is the process where the state indicates within regions how many housing different cities and regions need to accommodate. So we'll call this the RENA process. So every city, jurisdiction, including county areas, have to provide a number of housing units. The key thing is the cities have to accommodate these housing units through land use and zoning. The cities are not responsible for building these housing, nor is Downey, but they have to, through the land use and zoning, make sure that they can accommodate the numbers. So let's talk about those numbers. So HCD comes down with the total number of housing units through the state. Within the SCAG region, which includes 6 counties, 1.3 million housing units had to be accommodated by all the myriads of jurisdictions within 6 counties. But if we look at Downey itself, the housing element and the RENA process indicated that 6,500 plus units had to be accommodated by the city of Downey. And so that accommodation has to be done through, again, the land use element and the zoning code. And so that is I would probably say the impetus of this particular project is making those changes to make sure that we can accommodate those units because we told the state that we could through the housing element, hence that's why it was certified.
How many are we how many have we done? Oh, there you go. Is this it? No.
Well, this is not how many were done. This is the breakdown on the different income levels. But let's say the housing element was adopted in 2022. You could get credits up to October 2021, and then staff can probably provide. I'm going to put the onus on staff to how many units have started to accommodate. But the cycle to accommodate those units is between 2021 and 2029. And previous rounds of the housing element, many cities haven't met the RENA. Some blew by the RENA because maybe the RENA was small. Like, for example, Costa Mesa in the previous housing element only had to provide 2 housing units as part of the RENA. I think this time around it was over 1,000 or so. So the number of RENA changes. There's all these formulas and how the state provides the regions how many housing units. So this one was a heavy hit for many of the cities on housing units, and you probably heard through other cities and so forth. But this table is. Oh, go ahead.
My question: Is this a reasonable number, or can we hit it? Because it's a big number. I used to be on the SCAG board.
Yep.
And when we came up with numbers, it's like every city, we looked at each other like, okay, put down whatever number you want, because we're landlocked. How are we going to get there? So
I won't measure the reasonability of that number, but I will say that the housing element shows and that we will do the analysis when we do the land use, that we have to, and I'm saying we're not going to try to get up to there. We have to show that we can accommodate those 6,500 units in our land use. And so we're going to be doing a lot of technical analysis, working with city staff, using land use modeling and so forth. A lot of that analysis was done in the housing element, but we got to make sure it applies and it gets integrated through the land use map and zoning. In terms of, we're going to have to update, and we'll show it through the housing. The housing already did the analysis, and we got to just now make sure all the other documents come up to speed. And it does show that we were able to make those number of units. Whether through the 8 years or 9 years it's over, whether the city will meet that number, I can't say at this point. All right. So this gets down to how do we accommodate those particular units. Through the housing element itself, it did make recommendations on how we're going to get to those units. Excuse me. Making changes to the land use map, updating existing specific plans that don't have housing units now, and changing the zoning to increase housing on corridors, allowing mixed use on particular areas. And so those were identified in the housing element. Additionally, there was kind of a two-part strategy in how to reach all of those 6,000 units. One was, hey, there's existing projects approved and proposed in 2021. The ADUs, the accessory dwelling units, can also count towards the RENA numbers. And so there's an analysis that was done there. And then sites that current zoning at the time when the housing element was adopted to allow for housing units. This is the part that the part two strategy is really where this project takes place, making those changes to zoning and land use. So we're looking at increasing densities in the high density residential areas. Lower density areas, there are going to be no changes to any of the densities within the lower density areas. However, in the high density residential areas, there is in the housing element, they put to increase the densities there. And as I mentioned, looking at mixed use development on corridors, and then just where it can add residential opportunities in some of those commercial corridors. And we'll show some of those maps as this one here, that's in the housing element. If you go to the housing element itself, you can take a look at those sites. When we do the land use and zoning, we can provide more details on specifically, we're gonna look at all these sites and identify housing overlays, mixed use areas, but in a sense, make it consistent with the housing element, because these were all proposed in the housing element, and that analysis was done already to show the state that they can meet those 6,500 units. This table is also in the housing element, and it shows how those sites, how those 6,500 units are met by all those changes that I just talked about, increasing the density in certain zones, where there's existing allowances for housing in existing zones where no changes are going to be made. On some of those corridors that I talked about, where housing could be accommodated. And then specific sites, looking at Stonewood Center, the Downey Landing, where there's land available for development, another specific plan by the 5 freeway and Florence Avenue. Those are areas where the city had previously looked at and put into the housing element where they can accommodate those units.
Is there any accommodation for like Rancho, like the Rancho site back there? I mean, could we, if we rezone the Rancho, some of those Rancho, could that be, you know, adding 200 houses there? You know, the rent. I mean, I'm just asking if that goes towards that.
The Rancho specific plan is a fairly recent specific plan. From my recent recollection on it, it does allow housing on that specific plan. But I may need some assistance from Alfonso over here.
I'd have to revisit the specific
It's
plan.
just the biggest block of land that I know of in the city, that's all.
Yes, it does allow for mixed use residential development on that within that land use area.
And that site is, and yeah, I apologize, I don't have the numbers with me right now, but that site is also in the housing element. So it's a gray area, and that's the Rancho area site. But we're going to take all your comments.
I'm
throughout
sorry.
this process. No, you're fine.
I'm just hyper. It's
No,
hard
you're
for me to
good.
wait.
Go
My apologies.
back to that slide. I see on the plan itself, it does show the gray area, but also shows credits in parentheses. So we are getting credit for that.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Under this plan here, under the gray area, under the legend, it says approved proposed projects. It has parentheses credits, and it shows the gray area.
So that's showing that there are existing units that are allowed there now, and so that the housing element is taking credits to accommodate that RENA number. So it doesn't. So we'll work with staff to, and I'm not sure there's a plan to increase any units, but it looks like there's current units there that we can take credits from.
Is the project that was talked about today, would that, since there's a church there, I guess we'd be rezoned, so that we'd get credit for 33 numbers under this?
Potentially, if they come in as market rate units, then it would accommodate. You're right. Any housing units at this point that come in, depending on what affordability level, then they can count against the 6,000 units. So there you would have 33 units if that were to get approved or not. All right, I'm gonna go briefly through the other components that we're gonna update again. One of them is the land use element. Again, another element of the general plan. And the land use element, as the title of the element itself, really establishes the policy direction, the physical improvements of the different uses, and not only just the uses, but the building types and the physical environment to create districts in Downey. What we'll be doing is updating those policies, updating the land use plan, again, to be consistent with the housing element. And keep in mind, the land use map provides the long-term future projection of land uses for the city. The zoning, which I'll show you a little bit, really shows the development types that can happen in the city. Those maps do have to be consistent. And as I mentioned, the land use element will be changed to make a lot of those changes that we identified in the housing element. Let's quickly stay in the general plan realm and talk about the environmental justice element. So we're looking at updating two elements, the land use element and the environmental justice element. The environmental justice element will be an entirely brand new element for the city of Downey. And really what the environmental justice element does is make sure that it looks at different neighborhoods and ensures that populations in Downey, ensure there's the fair treatment of different populations, regardless of race, socioeconomic status, and so forth, and that they're involved in the decision-making of different projects that could impact certain neighborhoods. Really what the environmental justice element does is make sure that all neighborhoods have equal access to resources, and those resources could be a variety of things, but also they're protected from various environmental hazards and pollution burdens. And there are pollution burdens that are different in different areas and could impact different residential neighborhoods differently. The state has done an analysis of all the neighborhoods in California through census tracts and recognizes that there are different pollution burden levels and different socioeconomic population characteristics within those census tracts. And then within Downey, this is what the state calls them. They're called disadvantaged communities. Disadvantaged communities are areas that have, whether there's higher race and ethnicity, different health characteristics, higher levels of asthma, low birth rates. There's these various socioeconomic characteristics compounded by different environmental hazards and pollution burdens. They can be higher air quality issues through traffic. They could be groundwater issues, soil contamination, all different types of pollution burdens. And all that is analyzed by the state through what's called an Cal EnviroScreen data set. And then so these neighborhoods here are the neighborhoods that have been identified as disadvantaged communities. The darker orange areas are the residential parcels within those disadvantaged communities. You could see areas that have the lighter orange don't necessarily have the residential population, but it could have some sort of industrial use or an older industrial use previously that may have contaminated some of the land, but it may have been cleaned up. Nonetheless, there were some decisions that were made, and we do recognize there's been a lot of work through the federal government and Downey to clean up a lot of previously polluted sites. But all that is going to be analyzed through the environmental justice element. But really, what the element does is recognize those areas, but then addresses certain issues. And these issues are reducing pollution burdens in those neighborhoods, increasing access to healthy foods, increasing access to physical activity, and that could be parks, trails, and so forth, making sure that homes are safe and sanitary. A good example is older homes prior to the 1960s and 50s had lead paint in them. Lead paint creates hazards for young children. That's incorporated into the Callan virus screen as well. And typically neighborhoods that have older housing, that's an impact that gets counted in those Callan virus screen scores. Two other things that are important that the element must address is within those disadvantaged communities, what are the community needs and how can the city prioritize to get those community improvements to those neighborhoods? And it could be a range of items, and we really listen to the community to understand what those needs are. They could be anything from, adding more safer streets, adding more parks, adding more, community center or whatnot. We're gonna survey the communities to understand what their needs are, and within the disadvantaged communities, those can be prioritized in the element. And then the last thing that's important is the civic engagement. As I mentioned, there's two parts to it. One of it is through the element. Before we write the element, we'll be doing engagement. We want to reach all of the disadvantaged communities, but also all the neighborhoods. This is not just a disadvantaged community. There are other impacts to other neighborhoods as well. We want to do surveys, community workshops, and so forth to listen to the community, understand their needs, prioritize them in the element. The other part of civic engagement is making sure that these populations can come to events like this and talk about 33 housing units, but also other projects. Are there other ways for civic engagement with different populations physically coming here or other ways using digital technology or whatnot? And so that's part of the element. And these are all required by state law to be included in the environmental justice element. So that'll be part of this, that'll be included in the environmental justice element. All right, so we talked about the general plan. Now we're gonna move through the zoning changes.
Sure, do you want questions on environmental justice now or at the end?
Madam Chair, I'll let you decide whether you want questions between the presentation or at the end.
I think it might be easier if you deal with them as they come up because it's appropriate to the topic that you're currently discussing.
Okay, any general plan questions, land use and environmental justice?
Well, my question for environment, if you can go back 4 slides, the one with the city map where it says disadvantaged communities, yeah. So, I mean, this is a big chunk of the city. This probably adds up to, I don't know, 50% just by looking at it, generally including where I live, because we all live here and there. And then how do we, I'm trying to think how did we get to disadvantaged communities? How did my street get on this map that says that, and we live in a normal neighborhood without pollution, without, and there's no, yeah.
I'll provide the quick synopsis on how, so it's the California EPA department that actually conducted the analysis. So basically what they did is they took all the census tracts in California, gave them a score. There's 2 components to it. There's pollution burdens, and I think there's like 12 different pollution types: traffic, air pollution, particulate matter. We're going to analyze it, and there's a couple of documents or online engagement documents that you'll be able to kind of that will kind of describe, and I'll show those later, describe that process. But there's a bunch of pollution burdens. They all get a score. And then there's the socioeconomic characteristics. Like I mentioned, asthma, ER visits, low birth weights, housing burdens. Let's see, there's a couple of other ones, unemployment, poverty. Anyway, all those get a score. They use a percentile scoring system. So anything that scores within the top 25 percentile, meaning the top worst of all the census tracts in California, they all get deemed classified as a disadvantaged community. So those census tracts there, if you compare them to all the other census tracts in California, those are the top 25. Now, keep in mind, if you look at it regionally, there are census tracts in southern Los Angeles area that scored higher than Downey. There's some cities that I'm working in, all of the census tracts were in the top 1%. But nonetheless, and again, this is it was a scoring system that the state has come with. I won't say that it's 100% perfect, but it does. Once you start looking in these particular areas, you do start to see, these neighborhoods are along the freeways. These neighborhoods, there's different scoring attributes based off different pollution burdens and socioeconomic characteristics. We will show that data. We'll do that analysis to provide a little bit more information on how those different characteristics within those neighborhoods different. Maybe there's one neighborhood that scores lower but still was in the top 25. Maybe there's another neighborhood that's closer to the top 10%. We have those draft numbers, and we put together an online, it's called the story map, that does kind of tell that story of the different pollution burdens and provides that background information.
Okay. And lastly, you said on that, when your community involvement, parks, like where they should be and so forth. I mean, we all want more parks here. We're landlocked. Where do we find park space? Number one. And number two, who has to pay for that? Is that the city? Is there a state numbers, or how does that come about?
Well, so parks, let's do parks for example. Yeah, parks are paid for various ways. Cities pay for parks, but also through impact fees and so forth. There's also grants that are available. Areas that are within the disadvantaged community areas do qualify for grant funding from the state and other resources. So there's that one part. What the element does is start to look at those disadvantaged communities and does start to prioritize some of those. Whatever those community needs are identified, it does start to prioritize that. Doesn't mean it's prioritized maybe other deficiencies, but if you're within that disadvantaged community, the element does, and through state law, does say that there is a prioritization that has to be done within those areas. So if an improvement of a park between two areas, it's part of the CIP and money has already been allocated, that's something the planning commission or the council have to decide, well, this one's in a disadvantaged community, this one's not. It's part of the general plan. It's part of, you will have, as planning commissioners and city council, have to make that decision on where to prioritize. We'll put some of that information, background information in the element. But it's by state law, it says you have to prioritize community improvements based on community needs within the disadvantaged communities.
Thank you, sir. Mm-hmm. I look forward to a new park down the street from my house.
And we will do analysis to show where, and there was a Parks and Recreation Master Plan completed not too long ago, and we're starting to take a look at the analysis of parks, but it's not just parks, it's also physical activity, community centers that have programs for seniors, bike paths, trails, running paths, even just walking down the streets. That's physical activity to making sure that it's safe to do so. So it'll be a comprehensive analysis through all those factors that I talked about, because it is required by state law.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the general plan? All right, let's move into the zoning component. The zoning amendment and the zoning code and the zoning map, those are all tools, the implementation tools of a general plan. Again, it's also, we're implementing the housing element. So these are the changes that we've recognized in the housing element. So if you go back and look at the housing element, it's specifically in the implementation program, and we know this because the state looked at it specifically and make sure that we included a lot of these, what changes to make as part of the zoning code. I won't go into too much detail, but in the housing element itself, it talks about creating overlays to allow higher density housing at a minimum of 30 dwelling units per acre, and these are targeting commercial corridors, increasing the allowable residential density in the R3 zone, which is already a multifamily zone. And again, I'll emphasize that no lower density or no lower R1 zones are being included for increased densities. Other zoning text revisions, creating mixed-use zones, again, allowing 30 dwelling units per acre. The 30 dwelling unit per acre minimum is important because through the state, that is the minimum density that you can apply lower income housing towards the RENA sites. So any RENA site, if it a minimum 30 dwelling units per acre, but it also has size, it has to be half an acre or larger, and the state, you can count the lower income units off of those sites that have 30 dwelling units per acre. And that's usually all of the urbanized areas. Smaller cities, the density tends to be lower, and rural areas can go down to 15 dwelling units per acre. But for Downey, the minimum density to accommodate those lower income sites in the RENA is 30 dwelling units per acre. So we codified that in the housing element. And so when we do update the land use and zoning, a minimum of 30 will have to be included into those documents. Other zoning changes includes revising emergency shelters, supportive housing, group home requirements, and these all fall in line with state requirements. And then removing any constraints to housing that HCD, and through the analysis of the housing element, if there's any constraints to building housing that's not reasonable, those will be removed from the zoning code. The zoning map will be comprehensively updated again, primarily to meet the housing element and the land use changes, primarily for consistency. So those corridors where we're putting mixed use, those will be changed in there, updating those specific plans. Those will be all changed in the zoning map as well. Any questions on the zoning part? I kind of went through that pretty quickly, but it's more of a technical change, again, meeting a lot of the state requirements and identified in that housing element. All right, then let's move to the objective design standards, which will be a chapter or component in the zoning code. Bless you. All right, so what are objective design standards? These will be codified in the zoning code, and simply they are design standards to address multifamily units and how they should, what's the design of those. Typically before, and this is another state law requirement, before objective design standards, a lot of cities prepared what's called design guidelines. And design guidelines really were meant to show how different developments should look like, and they provide guidelines on development and architectural styles. The challenge with the state has determined that those guidelines used a lot of should, and it was very nebulous. So the new objective design standards that all the cities now in California do have to create or provide, all the cities have to provide objective design standards, is that they provide quantitative, measurable criteria for design for multifamily. The reason why is a lot of multifamily is now going to be allowed by right. If it's within a multifamily zone and it's allowed as a permitted use, it's allowed by right. The design standards have to be really clear to a designer or an architect on what those design standards are. They can't be nebulous. They have to be clear and measurable. And we'll show some examples of that. And again, so this is to regulate non-discretionary design of multifamily as well as mixed-use projects. As I mentioned, meeting criteria that's required by state law. Through the engagement process, we will be talking with developers, architects, local developers and architects to learn from them, as well as property owners. But it's really, the purpose of the objective design standards is really to increase the quality of multifamily, but making it clear to applicants and architects what the design requirements are for Downey's multifamily units. So which units apply to objective design standards? Basically anything that's not a single family type use. So duplexes, two houses on a lot under the SB9 requirements. If anyone has any questions on SB9, I can go through that. But duplexes and triplexes, townhouses, mid-rises. I don't think there's high rises in Downey, but the closest one is an example a picture that we put from downtown Downey. And then mixed-use development.
It's called a view.
Thank you.
Yeah. No.
The mixed use, 2/3 of it has to be a residential component so that the objective design standards apply. And I apologize, that graphic's a little hard to see. But really, these are examples of topic areas that are included in the objective design standards. Site design, how a building is situated on the site. Building design, how different facades are on different plane levels, architectural styles, sustainable design, open space and landscaping. Examples of the criteria has to be, again, measurable, has to have criteria that's clearly understandable and kind of in a black and white standard.
So sir, this is for multifamily only?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So, because in Downey, we went through that McMansion issue of several years ago, and the thing that the Conservancy and the Downey Historical Society, there's a code that we have in the city that it's got to be like the field in general of the neighborhood, general feel and look of the neighborhood and so forth. And, you know, I mean, the toothpaste was out the first time we built one of those big houses next to the ranch house. So that's been, 25 years in the making. So you're saying on this is only for multifamilies. So the different design look can look differently. A multifamily here and a different multifamily there, another as long as they're multifamily, I can't build a multifamily in one of my, next to my ranch house. So, but this is only for that. This is only impacts multifamily.
Yes, exactly. Any type of multifamily development that's allowed. And we will be talking with different stakeholders, like I said, architects, developers, or if there's different groups that probably want to weigh in on design standards and Downey, we definitely want to listen to them during the engagement process.
So can I ask a question to the city? So how, when you guys get these projects, a multifamily one, how do you, do you not try to convince them, but you say, hey, we'd rather have one of these on here because the general plan or that street looks like this? Or something? Do you guys work with the developer to do that?
Well, could I answer that question before staff does? Basically, what the design standards are, so let's say an applicant comes in with a multifamily application.
Right.
Staff is going to review that application and make sure that the design components of that multifamily through the site plan, the elevations, they got to make sure it meets all of the objective design standards. If it doesn't, they can reject the project. If the applicant decides, you know what, I don't want to meet the objective design standards, they then have the option of just going to the Planning Commission and go through a discretionary process through a CUP. That will be codified in the zoning code. So if they want fast track, streamline, they can make sure that their project design standards meet the objective design standards. If they want to get out of that, then they have to go through a discretionary process through the Planning Commission. But staff, if there's anything else you want to add to that, please.
Through the chair, if Commissioner Guerra, I think that answers part of your question. Is your other part of the question how we do it currently?
Yeah.
Okay.
The current process does not reflect what Jose is describing right now. As you know, these changes are being done to come into compliance with new state requirements. Currently, if there's a request for a multifamily project, the number one guiding factor is the general plan and also the consistency with the zoning. Assuming that both are in place to accommodate multifamily development, then the city takes in the project and it goes through our interdepartmental design review process. And ultimately, those projects, similar to recent ones that come before the commission, would come to the commission as site plan reviews. But through the changes that are being described tonight, those projects would no longer, multifamily projects would no longer come to the Planning Commission. If they're able to meet objective design standards, they would be approved by right. But the idea behind that is to make sure that we have, in conjunction with making the changes to allow multifamily projects by right, that we would have objective design standards that would accompany those changes at the same time, to make sure that if we do get a project, that it's not just approved by right and then we don't have standards to hold them accountable to. So to ensure that we get products in the city of Downey that are reflective of the policymakers, ultimately Planning Commission and City Council's desire of what we want to see. And so the important component of the objective design standards would be to also, we would present those objective design standards to the Planning Commission for input, to make sure that on the right side of the screen right now, it's small, but it says architectural building design. Those are some of the metrics that will be used, if you will, where the developer would be required to meet those requirements in order to be able to be eligible for a by right project.
Would the La Reina project that we just approved several months ago, would that have fit into this by right if these things were in place?
That would be an example of a project that, if it had the general plan and the zoning in place, which if I recall correctly, it did, the application was a site plan review before the Planning Commission. So yes, that project would have been a by right, but the difference would have been, one is the code would have been codified that it would be by right, but we would have objective design standards that would have been vetted by the Planning Commission that the developer would have been held accountable to.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, let's talk about the engagement process, or about the end, going on to the end of the presentation here. Here's the engagement process. Well, here's the purpose of why we want to continue with the engagement process. One, we're going to continue the housing element engagement process. So for part of the housing element, there wasn't an engagement process that we did. We will continue that process. We'll learn from what we learn. We'll take what we learned from the housing element engagement and continue it. But we'll be doing a lot of new engagement. We want to make sure that we create clear understanding of the approach of a community engagement. We want to make sure that we're proposing methods and tools that we engage with the community. And then we're also outlining the different groups that we're engaging with. So I'll go through those in a moment. We want to establish, here are some of the goals. We want to establish the timeline to implement engagement strategies, inform the community members of the implementation phase of the housing element, importantly, discussing the need of the environmental justice element. And then we just also want to make sure we're educating the community about land use and zoning. So here are some of the engagement activities that we will be conducting. Community leader interviews, focus group meetings, several community workshops. We will be doing an environmental justice community survey, and all these, I'm going to talk about these in a moment. Some of the outreach methods we'll do is flyers, both English and Spanish, fact sheets, newsletters, as well as social media and email blasts. So let's talk about each of these in a little bit more detailed. Community leader interviews, City Council, if there's anyone from the Planning Commission that like to talk to the consultant team, staff will identify, will connect with you, as well as community development staff, other community leaders. For focus groups, advocacy groups, those that advocate for different services, could be churches and other faith-based organizations. The Downey community, specifically for environmental justice, but through all of the projects and different tasks that we're doing, we want to make sure we're targeting different groups, those within disadvantaged communities, also doing through the survey, looking at all communities across Downey, targeting seniors, those with different disabilities, maybe using the PTA to get to some of the residents in the communities. We're looking at different approaches to really engage with different populations. You know, specifically for the objective design standards and some of the zoning changes, we want to talk to developers and architects, brokers, really understand some of the important nuances of real estate and issues that maybe previous projects have gone through. and as well as commercial property owners and businesses that are being affected by some of these zoning changes along commercial corridors. So definitely talking with various groups through focus groups. Community workshops, we'll have 3 of them, introducing the project, talking about all the different implementation approaches and tools, definitely bringing in the environmental justice component. And then the third workshop really presents the draft documents and allows the community really to review those documents. The environmental justice survey will focus on the environmental justice element. Again, really the importance or the focus of that survey is really to understand community needs in targeted areas. We're gonna do it both in English and Spanish, online and paper format. We'll work with city staff to target areas where we can help populations fill out the survey. And we do know that the survey will be easily be done on a cell phone. So it'll be wide-ranging in terms of how we get the survey out. And then we'll summarize the survey reflecting the responses so that when we do create policies in the environmental justice element, it's reflecting a lot of community need and what's been identified by the community, but not just through the survey, all of the public engagement tasks. We want to identify those needs because we want to make sure that the policies and programs in the environmental justice element reflect Downey community. So that it's really reflecting their needs. So that's really one of the important parts of the engagement process. And as I mentioned, outreach methods, social media blasts, email blasts, announcement through different media types. We've started to create draft flyers, again, both in English and Spanish, explaining what, and not just saying, hey, environmental justice, but how does it impact them? What, you know, to make it understandable for Downey residents. And something that I mentioned earlier, we're creating what's called an online story map that scrolls down and has a lot of detailed maps to show where areas don't access parks, where are those different pollution burdens, and it talks a little bit about Downey history and different uses and existing population. And you scroll down and it provides a story with lots of online maps. So we're really excited to share that to the community. We're still working on that story map. Lastly, the project timeline. Probably 1 year from now is when we will be bringing these documents to you for recommendations to the City Council and adoption by the City Council. Through under the winter phase that we're in for 2023-2024, we're doing our engagement. I think over the next couple of months, we're really gonna hone in on public engagement. Through the spring, we'll be updating the land use, zoning, environmental justice element, you know, after we get a lot of that public engagement. Also in the spring, a lot of the objective design standards through April and May and June. Summer and fall. One thing I didn't talk about is an entirely new environmental impact report will be prepared to address all of the documents. So we'll create a new environmental impact report to look at all those impacts. Because when the housing element was updated, we said, hey, 6,500 units in the housing element, but there was no analysis that was done, like what's the impact to the school districts, the water, the sewer. When we update a land use element, that really kicks in when we show that land use can show where that 6,500 units are gonna go in. We have to do an environmental impact report to look at those impacts so that there is clear documentation on what those impacts are to services and so forth and how those are mitigated. And that'll be all addressed in the environmental impact report. Then in next winter, either 2023 and 2024, we'll start the public hearing process. But throughout those phases, we will have different engagements. We want to make sure that we're letting people know when these documents are available, how they can provide input on those documents. We'll be getting emails from different residents that are interested in housing development, whether it's a 33-unit property or how mixed use is added to commercial corridors and specific plans updated. We want to make sure we're engaging with the population, the residents, to get full feedback from them as we update this process. So we'll work with city staff to make sure we have a really robust engagement process. Any other questions that I can ask? This is the end of my presentation.
I have a couple. And where does the funding for all this come from, sir?
I'm going to ask, I know the city, we were a contract with the city of Downey, but Irma, maybe you might want to provide a little bit more detail on where that funding's coming from?
I'm going to refresh my memory.
Sorry to put you on the spot there.
The first part of the project, which was the preparation of the housing element, is that what you're referring to? The preparation of all
the whole thing? Or
yeah,
when
the
you
first
follow
part
up?
of the project, which was part one, the adoption of the housing element was actually grant funded by SB2 state grant funds. We're actually going through the reimbursement process, believe it or not, still, because there's quite a bit of paperwork. This second part of the project that was approved by City Council was approved, if I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna go back to my early start days here, was approved by the general fund.
General fund. And is there a specific dollar amount?
For this part two,
Yeah.
528,000. I would say the high cost related to that, as you heard tonight, it's a very robust, extensive undertaking, not only from consulting services, but all the extensive community outreach. We had heard from the first part of the project, which was the preparation of the housing element, that there was a desire to make sure we continue that outreach and have those workshops. So that's what Jose was talking about today. And also the preparation of an environmental impact report is a very extensive and costly document, but I think well invested to ensure that any future projects that come under any future zoning changes have a more streamlined process through the environmental review, and also just to ensure that we're looking at community impacts and addressing those as part of this process. So that's a summary of the cost and timeline of the project.
So this includes the environmental of the EIRs, or this is only to do the study to get ready for the EIRs?
No, the 528,000 includes the preparation of the environmental impact report.
So the environmental impact report will be another yada?
No, it's included.
Oh, it's included, okay,
It is
great.
included.
Okay,
Yes.
great, thank you. And I think my other question, and I don't know, I mean, I know several people up here are realtors, but do realtors, will they have to disclose when they're selling a house that's in a disadvantaged community? Because I look at it just from a layperson. If I'm buying a house, I want to know that the state designated it as a pollution, yada, whatever, I mean, it's clearly there in bright orange and that kind of stuff. So will that be a disclosure, like, that they'll have to disclose, or will that negatively impact the real estate market just by doing this process? All of a sudden, this all comes out.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any state law that requires disclosure of the disadvantaged community designation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And through the chair, I think I understand your concern. Actually, when one of the first early meetings that I had with Jose and staff on the environmental justice component, when he showed me the map and I saw the orange, I was equally concerned. And I think one thing that we've been working on with Jose and his team and our team is when we go out to the public to be able to really explain what EJ environmental justice means, what do these colors mean, and all those variables and factors that Jose was amazingly able to describe today that go into this model by the state that we show. We want the public to really understand that. I think as staff, we're also asking similar questions about when we go out to the public. We don't want to just scare people and say, you're in a disadvantaged community. That's a very strong term. That's not something we selected as a term. That's already been assigned. So I think we also are concerned about the messaging and make sure people understand that this is what that means for Downey. And also, I think another thought that I had was to also describe to the public through the public outreach process that this is not only Downey, that there's other areas in the region. This is a regional also impacts that we're seeing. So I think that's something we also want to be able to describe to the public.
But we have a very active and proactive Realtors Association. You might want to make sure that they're aware of it, so all the realtors know that. When a goofy guy like me finds out that my house is in there, I'm not going to buy the house until I get more information, quote unquote, but at least our realtors are aware of it. Because I could see selling a house in the white area saying, hey, we're not in a disadvantaged portion of the city, that kind of stuff. So those are concerns, legitimate concerns I think we have from a market value, but thank you.
That's a good point.
I just have one question concerning the outreach to the public. Will it include any kind of direct mail to the households, or maybe dropping notices on the doors? Because sometimes people don't follow social media and read the Downey newspaper and things like that.
We do have a print media component to it, but we'll work with staff to determine about that. Yeah.
Thank you for that input. There's an opportunity to provide a messaging through utility billing. I know we've done that in some of my other jurisdictions, and I'm sure there's some other similar things that we can do. We can also tag along to other notices that might already be mailed out to residents. So we'll definitely look into that. Thank you for that input.
Sure. Okay. I guess there's no more. Oh, sorry.
And any possible postcards also to the residents?
I think that'll be associated with that. We'll work with staff to figure out the best way to get some sort of print media out to residents.
Okay, great. Thank you
I think
very
I'm
much.
scared.
Your presentation was very nice, very informative. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so going down now to the bottom of our agenda, does Planning Commission have any questions of staff? Commissioner Guerra.
No, I think nothing changed tonight. We're still having those future agenda items coming back on those dates.
Yes, through the chair, to respond to your question, Commissioner Guerra, the notice for the February 21st projects that are referenced on item 11 have gone out to the newspaper, and they would be published tomorrow, pending that those items continue to move through, and there's no request to make changes from the applicant. Staff is proceeding with the preparation of those reports, and those reports, again, would be available approximately February 16th.
Okay. Commissioner Lujan, any questions of staff?
No, I don't. Not at this time.
Commissioner Saikali, any questions of staff?
Yes, I do. They mentioned regarding the 33 condos. Can we take a look at the four-way stop sign that the person mentioned at Guatemala? And also, do we have a copy of the traffic analysis or traffic study for that location that we can review prior to the February 21st?
Through the chair, I can respond to those two questions. We've taken note of the comments that were provided today. I know I provided notes and staff was taking notes, so we will make sure that all those comments, including the one you mentioned, we're able to respond to any commissioner questions or that are addressed as part of the project analysis. And then for the second part, as I mentioned earlier this evening, there are environmental documents, including a VMT, vehicle miles traveled analysis, along with the level of service analysis and other types of studies that are part of the CEQA documents. We can, those are available to the public. There's one commissioner who has requested information already, and we've sent links to those projects, and we will be sending the same links to those environmental documents to the remaining commissioners. So if you can just look in your new city email inboxes, we will send those links over to you in advance of the February 16th date that I mentioned. But just know that the staff analysis of those environmental documents, any assessments on the meeting of the development standards or the project impacts would be included in the city's staff's report, which is the February 16th date that I mentioned.
Commissioner Morales, any questions of staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
None?
No, none at the moment, but I did want to follow up on those documents. I spoke with Alfonso earlier. I do need to get copies of the plans. The plans that are referenced in the document are very blurry. I can't blow them up to see the dimensions and so forth. If you can send those to me in PDF, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you for that mention. In the environmental documents that Commissioner Morales is mentioning, I believe it's Appendix K or something like that. There are plans related to site plan, floor plan, and elevations, but like a lot of PDF documents, when you zoom in, they get very blurry. So in our links, we'll be sure to include that appendix as a separate one where it's better quality. Thank you for letting us know about that.
Appreciate that. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Great. And I have none. My questions were addressed by other commissioners, so we're good.
Madam Chair, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I met with that developer about 6 months ago. They called me up and they had already talked to the city council and so forth. So I met with them, and then we got your letters and so forth that they had requested on there. And I just want to say to the staff, I got a lot of information answered by talking to them. And I know, being a new commissioner, I was scared, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong by talking to somebody. And I think the city attorney, it relieved me of that worry on there. So I just want to tell you that I learned a lot, good, bad, or indifferent. A lot of my questions were answered. And I ran into them the other day when I was talking to you there in the lobby. So I just wanted to make that comment out, that it's, your letter was helpful to me. So.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. And through the chair, I would just add or highlight some of the points I made in that communication. That was that, you're not obligated to take those meetings, certainly, but if you wish to do so, my recommendation is to use them as really a learning tool, and to be a listening exercise, if you will, to take in the details, and as Commissioner Guerra said, to learn more about the project. If you think that that would be helpful to you, but again, you're not under any obligation to take those meetings. The formal recommendation and assessments will all come from staff, and I would just want to underscore that staff will give you all the information that is necessary to make an informed decision in the context of their agenda materials, which I believe that Director Witron said be available on the 16th of February. And in the meantime, if you do have any questions, as I think I indicated in that email, you're always welcome to contact staff on a one-on-one basis. And there, I know I'm available to you to answer any questions you may have in the interim.
Okay, great. Does the Community Development Director have any additional comments? Boy, you've been talking a lot.
I do not. Thank you, Chair.
All right, so then we are adjourned until February 21st. Thank you.